What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Try Fish Aquatics. Today I want to talk about something not so specifically related to my tanks, but more or less me and the hobby. And that is how I got into the hobby of fish keeping. So where I want to start with this is I want to talk about from the very beginning. Not like when I started my fish room, but the very beginning. So when I was about 7 years old, maybe a little younger, my parents got me and my brother a little 1.5 gallon half moon aquarium that had a sunken submarine and a little scuba diver built right in. It was like a background on it, and it had a little periscope thing that you put down and you packed food in, and when you put it in there, the fish would pick off of that and eat it. And we had 5 little neon tetras that we kept in that tank, and they were in there for it felt like forever back then, but it was probably only 4 or 5 months. And looking back at that now, I realized that that tank was way too small for those fish, even though it was just 5 neon tetras. But they lived for what I assumed was a good amount of time at the time, and that all ended one day when my little sister at the time, who was 2 or 3, decided she wanted to feed the fish, and then took an entire can of Tetra fish flakes and dumped it in there and destroyed the entire tank. So we had to start over. It killed all the fish, killed everything. So we started over. We got 5 more neon tetras, put them in there, and they were in there for probably about almost a year. And my parents decided that since I was maintaining the tanks, or the tank at the time, that they were going to get me another fish tank. I believe I got it for Christmas or my birthday. I don't think it was just an out of the blue thing. But it was a 10-gallon starter kit, like the kind you would see at like Walmart. And I had that, and those neon tetras got moved in there, and I don't remember ever having any other fish besides neon tetras when I was a child. So that changed when I was about 13. One of my mom's friends decided that they wanted to get rid of their fish, and they gave me 6 convict cichlids. And not knowing what I know now, I put them all in a 10-gallon tank, and it was a battle royale. And I ended up only having 2 convicts left within a matter of about 2 to 3 weeks. And it just so happened that I had a breeding pair of convict cichlids, and I was having little balls and clouds of stuff moving around the tank that I didn't know what it was, and it just looked weird. So turns out it was little clouds of convict cichlid fry, and I didn't know that you were supposed to remove the parents or anything like that, or move the fry somewhere else. So they got eaten every week, and I just thought it was cool that, oh cool, they made more. But after that, I kind of started getting out of the hobby because it didn't interest me as much. Throughout high school, I was more into other things, and that is when I met my wife, who was just a friend at the time. We were childhood friends that lost contact. We regained contact in high school, and we started hanging out a lot more. And she pointed out that, hey, you have a 10-gallon fish tank on your dresser. And I was like, oh yeah, it's up there. And she's like, it's really dirty, you should really clean that. And at this point in time, the water was brown, and she wanted to know if I had any fish left in there. And I hate admitting this, but I did have fish in there, and I did not know. I still had 1 convict cichlid, and I didn't do any maintenance on that tank for months. She was just in there. And so I took the tank and I cleaned it out, and took a bunch of the plants out because I had a ton of plants in there and stuff, and the fake ones, and I just set it back up. you know, because yeah, I liked her and I wanted to impress her with the fish tank that she pointed out and said, you need to take care of that. So I did. And it was at that point that the hobby started to grow on me. And I started searching for more tanks. And I kind of blame my dad for getting me into fish tanks, because they bought me my first one, or my parents, but my dad had a 30-gallon fish tank in his room that he had picked his catfish and Oscars, and I think he had, oh, I can't remember the name of the cichlids. It'll come back to me. Jack Dempsey's. And I thought those were so cool growing up. And he had a 30-gallon, I had a 10-gallon. I wanted a bigger tank. So I asked around if anybody knew anybody giving one away, because at the time I was like 16 and didn't have money to go out and just buy a tank. I had just started a job and I didn't have it. So one of the ladies at my job actually had a 20-gallon high, and she was like, you can have it. I was like, okay, cool. So I got it and I set it up in my other dresser. I had 2 dressers in my room. So now one had a 20 and one had a 10, and I bought a Oranda goldfish from PetSmart, the $30 ones that are like that big. And I set it up, and he was in there for a while. And me not knowing much about fish keeping, just thinking they were really cool, had a bunch of ornaments in there, and he ended up getting stuck behind an ornament in between the glass and ended up dying. And this was a repeat process, probably about 3 or 4 times before I realized, hey, stupid, don't put your ornaments that close to the glass. It's killing your fish. So oh, let me fix that. So I finally got that figured out, and then I wanted another tank. So I found somebody selling a 55-gallon. I went out and bought that for $100, tank stand, all the medicine, all the foods, everything. And I set that up and had goldfish. And then I wanted another tank. So I went out and bought a 56-gallon. It was a Marine Land tank. And I set that up with 2 Oscars, which in hindsight, not big enough. So my dad ended up getting one of those Oscars, and I kept the other one. So at this time I had 4 tanks. I had a 10, a 20, a 55, and a 56-gallon. And I was living at home with my parents. So the time came that I got an apartment with my soon-to-be wife, and I couldn't take all those tanks with me, so I just took the 55 and 56, and I sold off the other 2. So we lived in the apartment for about 2 years, and I really had the itch to get more tanks, but the landlord wouldn't allow me to have them. So in a year and a half's time, we decided that we were going to buy a house. And I decided that for myself, I was going to buy a large fish tank, for me anyway, as a housewarming gift for myself. So I bought a 125-gallon tank. And I had that set up for the longest time with a couple common goldfish in it and stuff like that, because goldfish just fascinated me for some reason, and they still do. A lot of my tanks still have goldfish. And I had those 3 tanks running. So at that point in time, we had just bought the house, the tanks were all set up and running and everything like that, and I started working very long hours. I wasn't able to take care of all my fish tanks. I had 3 jobs. I was going to college still. So I ended up taking one of the tanks down because my Oscar died. So I took down the 56-gallon. And one of my friends wanted to get into fish tanks, and I said, hey man, take this 56-gallon. It was the tank, the stand, a Fluval 205 canister filter, a big light set up on top, and I said, you can have it. You know, if it gets you into fish keeping, I know I enjoy it, so hopefully you'll enjoy it too. I gave it to him. And he got some use out of it, and then he decided to get out of the hobby. And he wanted me to take the tank back, and I said, sell it. You know, it's better off you get money for it. I give it to you for free. I don't care what you do with it. So a few years later, I decided that I wanted to redo my 125, rescape it. So I started looking up videos on YouTube, and I found this channel called Aquarium Co-op. And Corey, who is the owner of the channel and the Aquarium Co-op store, I started watching his live streams and his videos and all of his all the knowledge that he had and the things that I was learning, and it really reignited my love for fish keeping. And I started finding more channels. I found Joey, King of DIY. I found KG Tropicals. I found LR Bretts. I found Steenfod Aquatics. I learned who Dean, the master breeder, was. And I started like finding all these channels and finding all these people and all this information. And my love for the hobby exploded. And as you can see behind me, it really did explode. So I was still on a budget, because at that time I was working 40 plus hours a week. I just had my daughter, or my wife just had my daughter, and I didn't have money to do anything in the fish hobby, but I really wanted to get into breeding. And so I started scouring the internet, Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and word of mouth, and just trying to find what I can for like low cost or free, and do what I can. And for the longest time I couldn't find anything. So I ended up finding, what did I find first? I believe it was this 29 gallon. The guy was getting rid of the 29 gallon, and he had all these tropical fish that are in here, and then some goldfish. He had a real big Oranda, and then I believe these two Ryukins that are down in this tank here. And he wanted $50 for that, and just that goldfish on its own was worth $50. And I drove out. It was about an hour drive. I met the guy. I had to bag up all the fish and everything. He didn't have any of that stuff, so I had to run out to PetSmart and get bags, because I didn't bring it with me, because I assumed that he was going to do it. Shame on me. So I got bags. I went back. I bagged up all the fish. I took the tank and put it in my truck, and as I was leaving, he said, "Hey man, I also have a 55 gallon tank, but the frame's broken. If you want it, it leaks." And I was like, "It's free, right?" So that's this tank. The top frame, the center brace was completely missing. He had siliconed the outside of the tank to try and stop it from leaking, but it wouldn't stop because obviously the seams inside were bad. So I did some YouTubing and I found out how to reseal a tank, so I resealed it. I put a new frame on it. I got it from my local fish store, and I had 2 more tanks. So then I was doing some research, and one of my friends called me and they're like, "Hey man, we found a 75 gallon tank. I was going to get it for my snake, but it looks like it's a lot longer than 4 feet. Are you interested?" And that's this tank back here. And that's a 75 gallon long. And they're very rare tanks. As soon as they were like at 75 gallons at 6 foot, I was like, yes, I want that. So I picked that up. I got that for free. I found another guy that was getting rid of his daughter's turtle tank. She moved to college, didn't want it anymore, and that turtle tank is now my 55 gallon guppy tank. There was a PetSmart $1 per gallon sale, so I got this 20 gallon long, and this 10 gallon I think my sister gave me, or somebody gave me that 10 gallon tank. I'm not sure who, it was a long time ago. And then this 55 gallon tank here, one of my friends told me that one of the other people at her job was getting rid of a 55 gallon tank because his wife left it in his house and she left him and he didn't want it. So he was getting rid of it. So I said I would take it. Drove out to his house. I got this tank. There's a light fixture over in the corner, which is no good. And there was actually 2 light fixtures. There was a fluorescent and an LED. The LED one's junk. So I got the whole tank. I got this filter, the Fluval 406 that's on this tank, another Fluval 406 because he said he couldn't get them to work. He tried, but there's nothing wrong with them. So I've got 2 Fluval 406s, a lot of these decorations. There's a whole bunch of rocks. I did a video on it a long time ago. It was like $1,000 worth of equipment that I got for free, and more or less that one pickup I was able to set up with all the filtration and air pumps and everything, this entire fish room, for nothing. The only other money I spent was for the wood for the frames, and 20 bucks in each of these tanks here, which I had a lot of scrap metal, so I went and scrapped it, got some money, and I bought these 2 tanks with some of that money. So basically this whole fish room cost me less than $100, or right around $100 to set the whole fish room up. I also have a bunch of 5-gallon tanks up here that somebody gave me for free. I know it looks like I just pointed here, but it's over there on top of my guppy tank. Those 5 gallons over there. So I got the whole fish room set up, and I realized that a lot of the tanks were running fluorescent lights, so I wanted to change that. So I started looking into cheaper lighting options, and I found a whole bunch of stuff that I made videos on, so I'm not really going to talk about it. And then I was looking into filtration, and it costs a fair amount of money to run hang-on backs and canister filters, so I started running sponge filters and trying to make it as efficient as possible. And this whole fish room has been up and running for less than 6 months, and I already have easily 1 to 200 fry in this fish room. And so far everything is going great. I've had my ups and downs with learning curves and stuff like that, but all in all, my love for the hobby has exploded like I've never seen before. I even searched out, instead of going to like PetSmarts and Petco's, I searched out local fish stores that are privately owned mom and pop shops, and I drive personally an hour just to go see these people, just to look at their fish, because I'd rather spend my money there than at a chain store, because I would rather support other hobbyists that own stores rather than, you know, somebody that doesn't care. But that's pretty much it. That's my story, and that's how I got in and out of and back into fish keeping. And right now it's just, it's here, it's now, and it's running my life. Not really, most of these tanks take care of themselves, but I'd be interested to hear your stories. If you guys want to make videos and post them up and, you know, share your story. That's mine. I know it was a little long-winded, running almost 18 minutes right now, but that's how I got into the hobby. So if you like this video, leave a comment, and that's all for this one. I'll see you in the next video.